We are live on Facebook. We are on Zoom. We will be on YouTube and Rumble and in the ether. God willing, everybody will get a chance to hear some Torah if they so choose. Now, you're probably wondering, this is Parshat Yitro, when the Jewish people get the Ten Commandments and they go to Har Sinai. What could possibly be food related in all of that? Well, let's find out. Let me share my screen and you'll get an idea of why I was quite busy preparing this class. Because there's a lot. Because in this week's Parsha, the Torah teaches lessons about eating before prayer, taking care of our parents' dietary needs, food related laws and concepts for Shabbat. So, yeah, that's a lot. As you can probably imagine, there's we'll and that's just some of what we'll be learning today. So let's get started in the very beginning. Uh, Yitro is Moshe's father-in-law. He comes to visit, and right away, Vayetze Moshe on chapter 18, verse 7. Vayetze Moshe likrat chotno, v'yishtachu v'yishaklo. He runs to meet him, and he bows down to him. He kisses him. V'yishalu ish l're'ehu, and they ask, yeah, "How you doing?" to each other. How you doing? And then vayavo ha'ohala, and then they go into the tent. So the Hadeh Hadibur points out that all of our forefathers. That's another sefer written by the way by Rav Zalman Sorotskin. So in that book he points out that all of our forefathers had specific tents, special tents designated for publicizing Hashem's great deeds and for converting converts. From the fact that Hashem in his Torah here emphasizes that Moshe brings Yitro into the tent specifically and then feeds him afterwards, what do we see? We see that we are forbidden to eat before prayer, which should not be a surprise because there's halacha like that. In fact, there's a Mishnah like that as well. The second Mishnah in Shabbat teaches us this idea and emphasizes this regarding specifically mincha, but that may just be because mincha is and people are therefore in need of a greater reminder. But really, if it's time to pray and you haven't prayed yet, and you're really not supposed to eat. So that's the lesson. It's one of the lessons we learn already from the get go. Just we haven't even gotten into the parsha. We haven't even. We only have Moshe introducing himself to Yitro, and already we have. Already these concepts of and let's see. Whoa, what happened here? One second. I can do that. Let's do that then. Okay. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do at all. That's not what we wanted to do at all. There we go. Okay. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. So, according to our sages, the beginning of such a meal is marked by either washing one's hands or loosening one's belt. So that's how you know you started a meal. And it talks about that in the Gemara in Shabbat 9b. Our sages. What was the question?
That is a legit thing, the belt. I thought that always was a joke.
No, that's what the Gemara says. Our sages teach us that one does not bother travelers who arrive in the city with other matters before feeding them. And here we have Moshe asking him about how are things doing, how are you, and all these other things, and he tells him about all the miracles of Hashem, and then he feeds him. So what's going on? Why is he feeding them, feeding Yitro after all of this when he should be feeding him first? It may seem strange that Moshe relates all of the miracles of the Exodus and the Jews' sojourn in the wilderness, apparently before Yitro even eats. However, the wording of our sages there is that it is a traveler to a city who must be given food before anything else, because food may need to be gathered. This is not the case in the wilderness, because why? They've been supplied with man. Furthermore, although Gentiles are not usually supplied with man, the sages, there's two separate midrashim that teach that Yitro is exceptional in that man fell for him specifically when he arrives. I think it says something like 600,000 omer. So there's plenty of food for everybody, and then some. So so he has what to eat. Um, what does Yitro say with after hearing all of this about what's been going on in the life of the Jewish people? He says, chapter 18, verse 11, Ata yadati, now I know, ki gadol Hashem mikol ha'elokim, I know that mikol Elohim, now I know that Hashem is greater than all the other gods. Ki but kind of a hard thing to translate is there, but kiba davar, because in the thing, dot dot dot, asher zadu alehem, what they wanted to do was done back to them. So the sages compare the punishment, and Rashi brings this down as well, the punishment of the Egyptians to a stew being cooked. Here you got food again. It's the metaphor is very apt. Why is it a good metaphor? Because what Yitro is saying is that just like the destructive fire is not usually good, right? A destructive fire can still cook nourishing food. Hashem has allowed the dangerous Reed Sea to save the Jewish people. So a dangerous thing like fire can protect, can feed, can nourish. So too the Yam Suf, which is a dangerous place, can save the Jewish people. And that's part of the comparison that he says. That's according to the Chatam Sofer. All right, next verse. V'yikach Yitro choten Moshe Ola zvachim. Moshe's father-in-law Yitro took Ola, that's a burnt offering, zvachim, these are sacrifices, le'elokim, for Hashem. V'yavo Aaron v'kol ziknei Yisrael, and Aaron, specifically Aaron, and all of the elders of Israel came, lechol lechem in choten Moshe, to eat bread why Aaron and the elders, and where's Moshe in all of this? So a lot of good questions. Why are they eating bread when there's meat that was just sacrificed? So what's going on? So a lot of commentary here. The offerings that Yitro brings are either animals suspected of being misused by idolaters, if this occurs before the giving of the Torah, or are not those kinds of animals if this is after the giving of the Torah, in which case he purchases them from. Am I frozen? Am I frozen? Everything okay?
Oh no, you're
You're
fine.
defrosted.
You're fine. That's not fun.
I've been cooked by the stew. Okay, good. All right, so the it just on my computer it looked like I was frozen there for a sec. Um,
No, I think it just
so
takes a while for the comments to come through. Like, I said, like, you're not fine. I mean, you were fine, and then like, you got it like a second later.
see, we're frozen. All right. Okay, so there's a big machloket. It's huge and it's old. And the argument it's brought in the Gemara, and a lot of the Rishonim deal with this. A lot of the Mefarshim deal with this. So when if the Torah is not always written in order, a concept, and it's true. The Torah is not written in the chronological order, so it's a question of this event of Yitro visiting, and then the next event in the parsha, which is the giving of the Torah, which came first. So it's not as simple. There's no right or there's no right or wrong answer. Either one could be true. Um, uh, in terms of pshat, but it depends on what kind of which animals he's bringing is determined by when this is happening. In other words, if this is happening before the Torah is given, as the way it's read, right? Obviously, that's the way it was written down. Then these animals are animals that he had to buy from the Jews. And if it's after the Torah was given, then we're concerned about this issue of misused animals, and so then therefore he cannot use that as a sacrifice. Either way, though, the bread that they eat is what Yitro brings along with him. The reason they eat at this point is to celebrate Yitro's acceptance of monotheism, and since it is a mitzvah to partake of one's own sacrifices, says Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Yitro does not share the meat with the elders. It's a mitzvah. He's going to eat it all. It's a lot of meat, by the way, but he eats it all. But he shares the bread so that they can join him in saying Birkat Hamazon with a zimun, as we talked about in previously about the need to pray together, or ideally. It might also be that Hashem uses the word bread in this verse as a general term for any food, as we see many times in the Torah. One second. See, this is why we do this, because we can fix things. I think that's bold and it shouldn't be. There we go. Much better. Mucho better. Moshe acts like a waiter serving food for everyone there. That's I believe that's Rashi. Right. So Rashi says that Moshe is there and he's not eating. That's why it says Aaron and the elders were eating. But Moshe is there and he's serving the food. Now, this makes this meal exceptionally holy. Why? Because benefiting from a meal with a Torah scholar is like enjoying the presence of the Shekhinah. And that's why Hashem is describing this as being before God, right? Lifnei Hashem, which is one reason that Aaron attends, despite Kohanim being discouraged from attending public gatherings and feasts. Now, you may or may not know this, but the Rambam in Hilchot Klei HaKodesh says that Kohanim should not go to public meals. Even Sudot of Mitzvah, Kohanim shouldn't attend. Now, I don't think, I don't know anybody who completely follows that in Halacha today, intentionally anyway, but we're worried that, especially in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, we were worried that there would be too much frivolity, too much craziness going on at parties, even a Sudat Mitzvah, right? So that it would be in an inappropriate place for a Kohen to be. But here Hashem in this verse actually singles out Aaron for special mention because the breast and thigh of offerings may only be eaten by a Kohen. And that's again Rav Chaim Kanievsky and Taam Dekra. Yitro's efforts in attempting to grow in holiness are rewarded when his offspring sit on the Sanhedrin in Yerushalayim, as it says in Divrei Hayamim, that Yitro's descendants sit in the Sanhedrin, and so the Rav Eli Munk in Kol the Torah points out that you see why they're being rewarded like that. What did he do to get that kind of amazing, awesome reward of having his descendants sitting on the Sanhedrin, of being judges of the Jewish people? And this is it, that his efforts here to make this such a holy meal, bringing sacrifices and Moshe attending to him, and all of that is a great zchut, a great merit, and that's why he gets what he gets. To the part, Moshe sends his father-in-law back home. How long he's there is a big there's a big to do about this in the commentaries. Does he go there and convert everybody, come right back, or what? Either way, he leaves the Jewish people, at least at this point, and maybe joins them again later. That's up to different interpretation. But what do the Jewish people do? B'chodesh hashlishi, in the third month, let's say to Bnei Israel me'eretz Mitzrayim, after that they left Mitzrayim, Bayom hazeh, on this day, and then there's in this third month, Bao Midbar Sinai. They come and enter the wilderness of the Sinai. Our sages, the Gemara, actually two different midrashim, the Tanchuma and the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, point out, and this is a famous idea, that you probably heard this before, that Hashem heals the Jewish people from all physical ailments upon their arriving at Sinai. Since the great singer of Israel, that's David HaMelech, describes the Torah as perfect, Torah Hashem, Tamima, right? The Torah is Tamima, Torah is perfect. It can only be gifted to people who are perfect, healthy, and unblemished. And so the Jewish people are healed from all their injuries, from all of their from their speech impediments, from their limping, from their bent backs, blindness, being unable to speak. Everything is healed, and for the Jewish people to receive the Ten Commandments. Now, the reason why this is here in a food related book is because aside from everything else, we know that food is supposed to be our nourishment. We're supposed to eat in a healthy way and eat foods that are healthy for us, and eat the foods that we need to survive and be healthy. So health is an important aspect of of a Torah life, of human life for that matter, or any animal. While we're at it, any living creature needs to eat the things that it needs, get the minerals and nutrients, vitamins, etc. that we need. So that is why we do what we do in our meals. Also, it's worth pointing out, and I can't emphasize this enough, and I've said this before, that this is how Hashem has designed the world, that we need these things, and that we actually, even without knowing it, want these things. If you look at a standard meal, okay, so they changed over time. Certain things were eaten that we don't eat anymore, ostrich or whatever. I'm not talking about kosher. Obviously, there's no such thing as a kosher ostrich, but certain foods used to be more popular at certain times in the world's history. But if you look at the standard meal had in it a starch, a protein, a vegetable, so like that, so that sort of basic structure of a meal is exactly what the human being needs. Now we know that now, thanks to the science of nutrition, for whatever it's good for. We know that we need all of these things in a healthy diet, and a good balance of these things. What's interesting is, just historically speaking, we've always been doing that. Right? It's not like we found out. Imagine we find out that oak trees, the bark of an oak tree is the most important thing for us to eat. If we eat oak bark, we won't need to eat anything else. It's not true, by the way. Don't quote me on this. Right? Let's say we learn that tomorrow. Scientists come out with there's a report. New England Journal of Medicine reports, after studying 1 million people, we find that oak bark is the healthiest food you could possibly eat. That would be very unusual for us, wouldn't it? Because and because we don't need it. We don't like it. It doesn't taste good. I mean, I don't know. I've never really tasted it. I imagine it tastes something like how it smells. It doesn't smell great. So we don't partake of it. It's plentiful, right? It's all over the place, but we don't eat it because we in our nature we eat what we want to eat. And what we want to eat is what we need to eat. It's a beautiful thing, the way Hashem designed us to want the foods that are good for us, is what I'm trying to say in short. And that's part of this idea here of the importance of keeping healthy. All right.
Is that like something to relate to like craving?
That's an interesting point, but yes, especially if somebody's craving something, especially we know the halacha is that if a pregnant woman is craving a particular food, she needs to have that food. She doesn't know it, but her body, her hormones or something are telling her that she needs that thing. If she's craving pickles and ice cream, right? The classic example of a weird craving that the pregnant women have, right? There's a reason for it. What's in the pickle, the salt, the brine that's in the pickles is what she needs. The calcium in the ice cream is what she needs. Her body is telling her she needs that. Conveniently, she likes that, or at least she likes it when she's pregnant. But so that weird combination that usually other people don't want. But yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. You're right. We crave as human beings. We crave foods. We, like I said, look historically. We make meals out of the things that are good for us. How did we know that? How come people don't eat oak bark or grass, or
Did
dirt?
people have salad?
Sorry?
Did people have salads in like the 1700s?
Yeah, of course they did. Yeah, they definitely did. Yeah,
Hmm.
let me put it this way. I mean, it's a whole longer conversation, but Thomas Jefferson, who's unique, granted, he went a little way more. He's way more like this than most people. But he grew, listen to this, 250 different kinds of peas in Monticello. Just peas. That's not all he grew. He grew all kinds of other things. But out of peas, he had 250 different kinds of varieties of peas. Right? I'm saying like they had huge varieties of food that we don't have anymore. A lot of these foods, by the way, are extinct. But yes, they
Hmm.
ate salads, they ate vegetables, they definitely did. And I mean, whether I'm not saying they were healthy or anything like that. They definitely overate, especially the 1700s. The Victorian meals were huge. I could give you a list of things they used to eat. But they definitely ate a lot of different kinds of birds and rabbits and all kinds of other stuff. They ate stuff we don't eat anymore. Even goyim don't eat anymore. But and like I said, other things, other fruits and vegetables that are now extinct. But most of the fruits and vegetables we have now are mass produced, perhaps overproduced, you could say, which is why they sell them in supermarkets. If you want like more unique fruits and vegetables, you need to go to farmers markets or some other places, and they don't taste quite as delicious or whatever, perhaps, or maybe they taste better. I don't know. They're fruits and vegetables I haven't ever eaten, and it's interesting because when it comes down to it, some of these foods create the kind of variety that we like. That's another thing we like. We like variety. Most people, I mean, we gave in the class in previous weeks, we talked about certain people of Aryaleb Steinman, who was famous for eating the same thing every single day. Whatever his oatmeal or whatever it was every single morning. So okay, there's that sort of musr, sort of like self-control sort of thing where you don't need variety, but most of us crave variety, right? If you had chicken and potatoes last week for Shabbos, right? You probably, if you're gonna have chicken and potatoes this week, you're probably gonna cook them differently. You're gonna spice them differently, or fry something or bake something. We like variety, even the limited menu that we have, right? Uh, Especially when it comes to kosher. So it's yes, we definitely have a history of that's I think a beautiful thing to learn. I think for me, one of the things I enjoy learning in history is what people ate, the history of food. And you see, we've always eaten pretty much the same thing. I mean, category wise, the food pyramid, more or less, was basically kept even without being told to. because we know what we need. Our body knows what it needs. Our eyes know what it needs, right? I talked about this in one of my short videos, I think two last year, if I'm not mistaken, about strawberries and how beautiful they are. They're bright and red, and when they're bright and red, that means they're ready to be eaten. When they're green and we don't eat them, which is good because they don't taste good when they're green. Right? There's a baby without any knowledge of what's good for it or not. If it's put in a strawberry field, will probably find the good strawberries just by sight. You know. I mean, it can go the other way also. There's also dangerous things to eat out in nature. There's berries that are nice and bright red that are poisonous. We shouldn't eat those, of course. But the point remains that of the foods that we eat, we know it looks good. You go to the store and you see a good banana or whatever. You see something and you see a bad one. For those people who appreciate bananas and want potassium in their diet, right? So that's that. All right, let's keep going though. There's quite a bit more to say. Um, uh, Chapter 19, verse 3. Moshe Allah and Moshe went up El Elokim up to God. Vikra elav Hashem. Hashem called to him. Min hahar limor, and he's from the mountain saying, Ko tamar leveit Yaakov, v'taged livnei Yisrael. Thus shall you speak to the house of Yaakov, and tell to the children of Yisrael. Yaakov and Yisrael, house and children. What are we talking about? What are these two different things? Famously, Torah may be taught differently to men than to women because they perceive it differently. And again, the house of Yaakov, Beit Yaakov, represents, Rashi tells us, represents women. That's where Sarah Shanir, Zichrono Levracha, came up with the idea of the Beit Yaakov movement, right? Schools for teaching Torah to women, differently than men learn Torah. So, but what does this have to do with food? So the metaphor that Rashi uses is from the word gidin, right? Because it says, when it says to teach the Jewish people v'taged livnei Israel, right? So the bitter food gidin is used as a metaphor for how harshly the Torah should be taught to men. It should be bitter, taged, gidin, right? Like bitter food, it can be taught in a tough way to men. Now, by the way, I'm not saying that this should be an educational philosophy today at all, but women and men definitely learn Torah in a different way. Hashem in His Torah mentions women first. By the way, this has nothing to do with food, but just putting it out there that we have Beit Yaakov and then Bnei Yisrael. Beit Yaakov is the women. They're mentioned first. Why? Because women's influence maintains the Jewish spirit in their homes and in the hearts of their children. So it's the women that need the spirit of Torah almost more than the men do, which is why. We'll speak more about that, I think, on Shabbat.
Woohoo!
Yeah, we'll see how that works with with the Torah portion in general. I might as well tell you now. I mentioned it every Shavuot, that um, without getting into any gross detail, the men and women were supposed to be separate for 3 days before Shavuot, before the Torah was given. And why is that? Because everybody needed to be pure when the Torah was given. In other words, if the man and women would have had relations, then they would be impure the next day. Men would be impure the next day. Women are impure for 3 days. So whom did we have to wait 3 days for? In other words, why did the men and women have to stay away from each other for 3 days? For the women to receive the Torah, right? Because the men could have received it the next day. But so I don't want to get into all the details, like I said, about Tuma, Tahara, and all these things. But that's how that works. Okay, 10 verses later, chapter 19, verse 13. And not a big deal, but just a technicality. And we'll probably we've had reference to something like this before, and we'll have again in the future. But the word behema, right? So first of all, the verse says, Lo tiga bo yad, nobody's allowed to touch the mountain. Ki sakol yisakel o yaro yireh. So otherwise they'll get punished, they'll get stoned to death. Im behema, im ish, whether it's an animal or a person, keep your animals away from the mountain, and no person should touch the mountain. Lo yichya, they're not going to live. Bimshoch hayovel hema yalu bahar. Until the ram's horn is sounded, the long sound, right? Then you'll know that you can come to the mountain. So there had to be like a preparation time for Har Sinai. There's for whatever reason the Jews were not allowed to get close to the mountain. Now, what animal is mentioned here? It says im behema im ish, whether animal or man. Behema here is an animal, and it's a reference to all creatures. Now, usually, the reason why this is significant is because behema is different than a chaya, right? Behema is a domesticated animal, technically. But here, all creatures are meant. If you're donkey's a bad example. That's domesticated. Let's say you have a deer, right? And the deer runs out and touches the mountain. It's safe. It can do that, no problem. No, of course not. No animal is allowed. So this is basically a reference to all creatures, which is again a technicality for now. But try to remember that for later. Not today, but for later. Okay, now we get into the Ten Commandments proper. And in the Ten Commandments, there's quite a bit to talk about with regard to food. Chapter 20, verse 5 tells us, with regard to the Avodah Zarah, you're not allowed to have other gods, you're not allowed to make other idols, etc. Whether that's one or two different halachot is big discussion, argument famously between the Rambam and the Ramban, but not for us here. Lo tishtachav elahem, lo ta'avdem. You cannot bow down to them. You cannot serve them. Ki anochi Hashem Elokecha, because I am Hashem, your God. I'm so glad we do this. Give me a chance to fix typos. Kel kana, I am I guess it's usually translated as jealous God. Although kana really here means caring, right? He cares a lot. But we'll talk about that later, perhaps, when we get to Sota, because that's the other time that the word kana is referenced. Is for a husband who is quote unquote jealous of his wife for having an affair. He's not jealous of her. He cares about her. He wants to keep her. So same thing here with regard to Hashem. Poked avot al banim, who carries on the punishment of fathers onto their sons. Al shilishim v'al ribeim lusonai, for the third and fourth generations, for those who hate me. Big, not related to food, but worth mentioning. There's a big argument, and a lot of ink has been spilled in discussion of this last concept of children being punished for the sins of their fathers. Obviously, I can't make it more clear, I think. We don't believe that a sin performed by one person will have somebody else punished. The idea, according to basically the basic idea, is that the reason that it carries on to future generations is because it influenced them. You saw your parent do such and such a thing. You probably think it's an okay thing to do, and then you're going to do it also. And that's how mistakes get perpetrated and perpetuated. And for generations and generations, people do the wrong thing. And so that's kind of what it means. in short. Uh, Worshipping Avodah Zarah is such a severe transgression. The sages, the Gemara, I think, in Avodah Zarah, yeah, 38b, forbade eating foods that's bishul akum or drinking wine, yayin nesach, produced by Gentiles in the concern that we might partake of their food and thus get close to worshiping their gods. Now, there are other reasons not to eat these foods, but one of the reasons, I should probably put that here. Uh, one of the reasons, one second. One of the reasons, that's good. The sages forbade this is because we might partake of their food and then worship their gods. That's actually what happened more or less with the daughters of Moab. And when we get to that, we'll talk in greater detail about these particular sins and how this happens. But avoiding avodah zarah is one of the reasons for wine in particular, right? We're very particular about. It's not just not just making it, maybe touching it, pouring it, looking at it. There's all kinds of strictures when it comes to wine, especially that's unboiled, because indeed, uh, other nations of the world, even today, use wine in their sacrament, in their sacrificial services, right? There's an idea in one religion that it's the blood of their god, right? And then they blame us for. Then they accuse us of eating blood after they drink the blood of their Lord, who was a Jew. It's a whole interesting
Ah,
philosophy.
yeah,
What was that?
I never put those two that connection together with the
Yeah.
interesting. They do with the
It's
wine.
well, it's their symbolism. No wonder they no wonder they think that blood is uh, is something other people eat. All right, yeah, and there are actually in halacha. We're coming up. Don't want to scare you, but in about 2 months, we've got Pesach coming. There are people who, on purpose, who have a custom not to drink red wine during the Pesach Seder to protect their kittel. No, I'm kidding. To to avoid people seeing them and thinking that they're partaking of blood. Because red wine, especially earlier generations, when the wine was thicker and more syrupy, uh, not syrupy, but syrupy, um, the wine was it looked a little more blood-like. All right, gross. Okay, chapter 20, verse 7. Back into the Ten Commandments. One of the laws is Lo tisa et shem Hashem Elokecha l'shav. Do not swear in Hashem's name for no reason, in vain. Don't use Hashem's name in vain, right? Lo yikana Hashem. Hashem will not forgive him, not forgive, will not justify him. Eight asher yisa et shemo l'shav. Whenever this person takes Hashem's name in vain. So, what's an example of taking Hashem's name in vain? So, there are four main examples that the Sefer HaChinuch, the Rambam, the Sefer HaChinuch bring as what this is talking about here. Examples like swearing in God's name that that something isn't what it is when it's obvious. Like you have a salt shaker, and you say, "I swear in Hashem's name," in front of witnesses, etc., that this is a diamond ring or whatever, right? So that is an example of swearing falsely, or swearing something is obviously what it is, right? I swear in God, Hashem's name, that this is a salt shaker. Really, you needed to do that. So there's a few other examples. The one of the four examples is specifically related to food. So back to food again. One of the four types of false swears that Hashem forbids in this verse is swearing that one will not eat or drink for 7 consecutive days. Why? Because it is physically impossible to live without eating or drinking anything for that long. Right? So it's an impossibility. So saying it is a false swear because it's not possible. That's at least one way to read it. There are other opinions. That's the Rambam, but the Ran disagrees, and he says actually it is possible. It's possible because you can do it, you'll just die. It's called suicide, right? But you can do it. I mean, physically can try to do it and then fail and die. But to swear to do it is basically committing suicide, and that's what's wrong with this particular kind of thing. That's why this is forbidden. Okay, it's good that this class is on Thursday night because now we get to talk about Shabbat. And there's so much to say. These 7 little words. Oh, wow. No, 6 words. Ah, never mind. These 6 words. It's ironic because it's 6 days we're talking about. These these 6 words have a lot of Torah behind them. Sheshit Yamim Tavod, chapter 20, verse 8. Sheshit Yamim Tavod, for 6 days you should work. Va'asita kol malachtecha, and do all of your malachtecha. What's malachtecha? So it's translated based on the Gemara, based on the Or Chaim as well. We can translate it as creative work. It doesn't mean labor. It doesn't mean hard work. And it's a big, big problem. A lot of people don't understand the very basics of Shabbat. Frankly, Shabbat is my busiest day of the week, right? I work the hardest on Shabbat. I walk the most. I sweat the most. I learn the most. I organize everything you can imagine. And that's not just it's not just a rabbi thing. For most people, they work a lot on Shabbat. That's not what it means to rest on Shabbat. It's to avoid work. It means to avoid malacha. That's very clear here. Sita kol malachtecha, not avoda. Sheshit yamim ta avod. 6 days you do avoda. You work. That's the labor. But vasita kol malachtecha, and you finish all of your creative work. Why do I translate that as creative work? Because the only other time in the Torah that the word malacha is used, besides in the context of Shabbat, is in the context of the building of the Mishkan. So anything that is involved in the building of the Mishkan, which is creative, obviously, or the use of the Mishkan, which is also creative, as we shall see, is all called malacha, just like this is called malacha. So let's start with the basics. One second. Oh, that's weird. Huh. Okay. 1 second. Let's get a chumash. We have a problem here. There's the not a big problem. I'll fix it. But chapter 20. Verse 9, I think we don't have here for some reason. It's an important one. Yeah, verse 9. Zachor et Yom HaShabbat l'kadsho. Remember the Shabbat day to sanctify it. Should probably have that. But this is why interesting. Yeah. So the way to remember Shabbat is to be constantly on the lookout to buy special foods during the week in honor of Shabbat, which is based on Shammai's method of buying nice foods for Shabbat on one day of the week and upgrading it to something even nicer should an item be found later in the week. That's actually what Shammai did. What Hillel did actually was the opposite. And which is he would wait until Thursday night, Friday, or whatever. He'd go shopping, and as it says in the halacha, you should do. It says as we saw in Aruch HaShulchan. That's what you're supposed to do to prepare for Shabbat. You're supposed to prepare on Thursday, Friday. So that's what Hillel did, and he would get the foods. One second, one second, one second. Okay. All right. So, but we are not on the level now to have the same kind of emuna and faith that Hillel had. So the best we can do is like Shammai did when he bought good things for Shabbat all the time, and then would find something even better and use that. That's what we should do if that becomes a possibility. The mitzvah of sanctifying Shabbat is fulfilled in the recitation of Kiddush while holding a cup with a revi'it of wine in it. Right? So there you have more food. Right? One should not eat until fulfilling one's obligation of Kiddush. Right? We use wine for Kiddush. Why? Because it gladdens the heart, as per Tehillim 104:15, and thus better prepares us to feel inspired. So says the Gemara in Brachot 35b. One may use bread instead of wine if one prefers that food. And I don't really see too many people doing that. Most people use grape juice. But Havdalah, however, should only be recited over wine. So you can't use bread for Havdalah. There are other details to these halachot. Obviously, if you don't have wine, you can use Chamar Medina, which is a drink of the land, whatever that is. That's a big to do amongst the poskim. What if anything is considered Chamar Medina nowadays? But a lot of people say that it should not be water based, whatever it is. So, for example, coffee, which is like 99% water and 1% coffee crystals or whatever. Talking about instant coffee. I know some people are disgusted by the mention of the thing. So, but if that's what you're drinking, then perhaps that is not Chamar Medina according to some opinions. Okay. Kisheshet Yamim Asa Hashem et Hashemayim v'et haaretz, because Hashem created in 6 days the heavens and the earth. Et hayam v'et kol hashabam, the water and everything that's in it. V'yanach b'yom hashvi, and he rested on the 7th day. Al kain berach Hashem et yom hashabat v'yikadshehu. Right, and therefore Hashem blessed the 7th day, the day of Shabbat, and sanctified it. The way to dedicate Shabbat for Hashem is to be involved in Torah and minimize one's delighting in food and drink. So these big parties on Shabbat, onegs and all that. So if that's all you're doing, then it's not really what Shabbat is for, according to the Sforno. Although this seems to contradict the idea that one should satisfy one's physical needs on Shabbat. There's that idea of oneg, and mentioned the Gemara Pesachim 68b. The words of the prophet to make the Shabbat a delight indicates that one should enjoy one's Shabbat food and drinks if one's sole motivation is for Hashem's honor. If you're doing it for that, then yeah, go ahead, enjoy your oneg, for sure. One way to make Shabbat special is to eat 3 meals on it, which is one more than we eat on an average day, according to the way people used to eat in the time of the Talmud. It is so important to do this that the sages actually permitted a person to save 3 meals from a house that is burning down on Shabbat. They even allowed people to save 3 meals for their animals, since a person should not eat until after feeding one's animals. So you've got that. So again, a lot of food-related things, all because of Shabbat. One who eats this 3rd meal, this shalosh sudos or sudash lishit, is promised to be rescued from the suffering of the birth pangs of Mashiach, the judgment of Gehenna, and the wars of Gog and Magog. Right, so like this is who says this? This is the Gemara in Shabbat 118a. So receiving pleasure from eating holy food on Shabbat is so important that when David HaMelech learned Torah all of Shabbat to avoid dying on that day, it's a famous Gemara like that, he still ate the required 3 meals because these have the holiness of Torah study. The eating of these meals is like Torah study if it's done for the right reasons, as we saw before. So says the Chafetz Chaim. We are forbidden to perform any creative work on Shabbat. The sages list 39 such activities. Of those, almost half are applicable to food. So, although it is not within the scope of this work to go into great detail regarding these, the 39 malachot, right? The following is a list of basic rules and concepts related to food-related creative labors. Now, all of these that we're going to list, and by the way, if you're interested to learn more about the 39 malachot, I have I cite here Rav Simcha Bunim Cohen's The Shabbat Kitchen, Rav Yeshua Newworth's The Shmirat Shabbat, and Rav David Ribiat's The 39 Malachot, or any of the many other wonderful works on this topic. But basically the first few of the malachot, the 39 malachot that are forbidden on Shabbat, all have to do with wheat and all of the steps and processes in making bread. Let's call it. So first of all, let's go in order here. Sowing. This includes anything that helps the growth of a plant, like watering, grafting, fertilizing, or moving certain plants. Plowing. This includes any activities that prepares the ground for the planting of a seed, like making holes in the ground, softening the ground, or flattening the ground. Harvesting. This includes cutting a plant away from the ground in any way, like picking a flower or fruit, breaking a branch from a tree, or removing a leaf. Gathering. This includes combining fruits, vegetables, or other growths together. Threshing. This includes removing things from their natural encasing, like squeezing the juice out of grapes and oil out of olives. Winnowing. This includes using the power of the wind to separate the chaff from grain, like blowing shell fragments off nuts or shaking breadcrumbs from a tablecloth. Separating. This includes choosing items from a randomized collection and placing it into a designated place, like straining a food, picking out silverware to put in a designated place, unless one separates the wanted items out from the unwanted by hand for immediate use. By the way, I'm speaking very, very short here, very shorthand. In fact, just this last segment that I said about this exception is 3 separate laws that I'm sort of combining together into one sentence, right? Again, you're separating the wanted items from the unwanted. It has to be by hand, and it has to be for immediate use. All 3 of those are separate pieces of this, of when separating is allowed. Grinding. This includes chopping, cutting, grating, crushing, mashing, shredding, or breaking something into very small pieces. You can't do that on Shabbat. How people make Israeli salad on Shabbat is a good question. There are halachot about this, how to do it correctly. Sifting. This includes using a strainer or slotted utensil to sift or strain something. Kneading, with a K, not kneading like I need this. This includes mixing something with something else that is a powder or thick, if their combination becomes a paste-like substance. In other words, like making dough, right? Obviously, is the classic example. And baking and cooking. This includes heating up an item until it changes. So there's plenty of halachot about this. A lot of details that we're not getting into, but again, books like this, the Shabbat Kitchen, would be a good place to start if you want to know more about that. And by the way, besides books, there's plenty of classes available on these topics as well, even locally. Yes.
Sorry, the book is blurry.
Well, it's called yeah, The Shabbos Kitchen
Okay.
by Rabbi Simcha Bunim Cohen. There's I'm showing you like an older edition. There's a newer, much more updated edition. And by the way, if you're interested, let me know afterwards, and I can set you up with a free copy. I think because there's groups of people in Lakewood who learn this sefer, and they get a free copy if they learn it in like this daily schedule that they have. So if you're interested, it's a very good book to learn. Um, Next, last piece here. Another mitzvah from the Ten Commandments that has to do with food. Kaved et avicha v'et imecha. Honor your father and your mother. Leman yarchun yamecha. Therefore, if you do, your days will be long on al hadama, on the land asher Hashem Elokecha notein lach, that Hashem your God has given you. What does this have to do with food? You might ask. Honoring your father and mother. And the answer is, says the Sefer Chinuch, the mitzvah of honoring parents includes the responsibility to provide them with food. If one can afford it, one should support one's needy parents, obviously, if they need your help. If feeding one's parents becomes financially burdensome, one may be obligated. There's a difference of opinion that's why it may be obligated. There's a difference of opinion about whether this is an obligation or not. One may be obligated to go door to door seeking charity to get food for one's parents. So that's how important it is to feed again with food your parents. Another example from the Torah of food related halachot that everybody should know. And big, like I said, busy parsha, lots, lots to uh, lots to unpack here. A lot of concepts, all related to food, whether it has to do with guests and food, whether it has to do with Shabbat and food, or treating food properly. Our ideas about health, a lot of items, a lot to talk about. And I hope you enjoyed, and hope you review, and hope to see you again next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.